Ladies and gentlemen, Marco Rubio and other Republicans in the Senate and the House want Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, to resign or be impeached. New York Post, Forbes, Fox News, The Hill, Rubio calls for Buttigieg resignation following Ohio disaster. And Forbes, top Republican senator, demands resignation of transportation secretary. Buttigieg, along with others, always said that impeachment is a political statement. It's a statement that somebody has not lived up to their duty as president, in this case, as transportation secretary. So you don't have to commit a crime, according to Democrats. Usually, impeachment was if you committed a crime, or if you were like Nixon with Watergate was a cover-up. Okay, and it was a break-in. So then there was obstruction of justice because he didn't want investigators to find out Nixon, his ties to a break-in and to plumbers. Okay, breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters. It was an actual crime. Trump, they can't get him on anything because he's never committed a crime. Donald Trump has never committed a crime. That's why he wasn't indicted in 2019 or the following year. They impeached him twice. They've never indicted him. They've never even come close to indicting him. That doesn't mean they won't eventually, just to knock him out of 24. But the point is, Pete Buttigieg has been a catastrophe in terms of the transportation secretary. So we have had an absolute nightmare in terms of cancellation of planes, and that's a whole other story. What took place in Ohio is an environmental and humanitarian catastrophe. Now you have publications on the left or in the mainstream or with, linked directly to the Democratic Party saying, well, you have to trust the government, but you never trusted Trump. Democrats never trusted Trump, not even 1 second, when he was leading the government. They only want absolute obedience and allegiance when they're leading the government, and you see what's taking place. You have these aerial reconnaissance vehicles, whatever they are. We have a spy balloon, and then you have a whole bunch of unidentified flying objects, and then you have a terrible, terrible disaster. Now, Buttigieg stated, well, about 1,000 of these took place. About 1,000 of these took place in years past or last year. This is a deceitful, false statement. No, there were not 1,000 of this type of tragedy in Ohio. There were not 1,000. False. Then you have the issue with water, which was what we saw in Flint, Michigan, during President Obama's administration. So, during President Obama's administration, his administration lied about the water in Flint. Okay. Now this Democratic administration is almost certainly doing the same thing. The reason that he is not focused on this is because it is yet another catastrophe and tragedy during Biden's administration. So if he wanted to focus on, or if he had the courage or the integrity to focus on this, the Treasury Secretary, he would have found out that it's his policies. We're not going to get too into it right now, but Biden's policies caused inflation. When you pump 200 million barrels of strategic petroleum reserve after you went after the oil and gas corporations saying we're going to make it difficult for you to pump oil and gas, then you realize through lawsuits that inflation's going to skyrocket because guess what? The economy and everyone's paycheck revolves around fossil fuels and energy and pumping gas into your car and all of that. And then you try to reverse course. Well, that is Biden's policies, his executive orders. He was sued by oil and gas associations. That's just one example. Then you have Mayor Pete focusing on social issues that have nothing to do with transportation flourishing or, running properly within the United States of America. So If you look at, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Go to hagoodman.com to read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, and other publications. Become part of a newsletter there. If you want to become a part of a Patreon, your support is greatly, greatly appreciated. I'm going to slowly work on sponsors for the channel. And I'm going to do more collaborations, just build up the channel from 200,000 and beyond. I have to do those things, and I will. But if you do want to support the channel, your support is greatly, greatly appreciated. The Patreon is below. Become a member. To my members, thank you so very much for being a member on this channel. And also, a super thanks is below as well. So, the United States Secretary of Transportation is the head of the United States Department of Transportation, principal advisor to the president on all matters relating to transportation. So he's failed in that regard. A member of the Cabinet of the United States since 14th in the presidential line of succession. So the Department of Transportation oversees 55,000 employees and 13 agencies. Federal Railroad Administration, National Highway Traffic Safety. And so what he did was fail to realize a couple of things. One, shutting down the economy completely disrupted supply chain. That was a big problem. We have shortages now because of the inept or incompetent job performance of Mayor Pete. We have supply chain breakdown. We have these derailments that are environmental catastrophes. He's not making an issue about this. If you look, he's not even going to Ohio. And he made very offensive and absurd comments the other day regarding the absolute tragedy. And so you have Republicans who, like the Homeland Secretary, they want to impeach him. They want to impeach him, and they want him to resign. If he's not going to resign, they're almost certainly going to impeach him. So then you have, he's on Twitter utilizing bureaucracy and saying, if bureaucracy, if people had abided by this or that, it's like, well, this is happening under your watch. See, here's the thing. They are the government. Then they say, well, if these people didn't abide by government regulations, it's your job to ensure they do. It's your job to ensure that things run properly. And this is not just the only catastrophic environmental catastrophe pertaining to derailments. There have been other examples. Okay? Then there's an issue on information that misinforms. The problem here is that not one person in this country with a functioning brain cell trusts this administration or the Secretary of Treasury. Not one person. Now, that's obviously like common sense. You wouldn't trust an administration where all of these catastrophes are taking place. We didn't have this Ohio catastrophe with Trump. We didn't have the UFOs under Trump. There's zero evidence aside from some people, anonymous people, gossip, hearsay, saying, oh yeah, it happened under Trump. Well, do you have any evidence, proof? Oh, well, you can't see the proof. It's classified. They're lying. They lie through their teeth all the time. So it's taking place. He's not showing any care at all. And when you look, there's shortages. The shortages are a big problem in the United States of America, okay? And he should have understood that it was Democratic policies that shut down the economy and Democratic policies that ignored the supply chain breakdown, okay? It was a choice to shut down the economy. His political party pushed. Every time Trump wanted to open up, you had Washington Post, New York Times, every other publication. Experts say Trump is opening up too soon. You would have Democrats still want to shut down the U.S. economy now. But you have a complete disregard for the consequences of Democratic Party, the consequences. So he's, just the other day, he's focusing on electric vehicle chargers on Twitter. It's like, are you kidding? You have an environmental disaster that should be the number one focus by people who claim to care so much about the environment. Give me your thoughts below. This is not just wishful thinking. He will either be impeached or forced to resign, because these things coincide with the UFOs and the spy balloon, and the whole thing is very bizarre. And this is very peculiar. The whole thing is very peculiar. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe.